There's something very important coming up for the Pokemon franchise soon, and it's going to change the game. Literally. It might change all the future games forever, potentially. We'll have to wait and see. The game's not out yet. It's called Pokemon Champions, and this is going to be a massive, massive flip in how the competitive format is done. I'm excited to see how all this unfolds. People have had so many different ideas on what it could potentially be, because we don't know for sure yet. Is it going to be a Pokemon Showdown, but for the Switch and the mobile devices that you can play whenever, that you can create your own Pokemon? Or will it simply be just another version of Pokemon Stadium, where the only real ability you'll have for getting Pokemon in it will be to either maybe like rent them or to import them from Pokemon Home? We don't know yet, but I'm excited to hear how it's going to change the freaking format forever.
The company just announced that they are working on a game that is still in development that I think is going to change the way that Pokemon operates forever.
I like how they had to add, there's a little text thing that says effects added, not actual gameplay
Still in
footage,
development,
while you see someone get literally blasted in real life by a hyper beam. Like, guys, this won't actually happen. You don't need to worry about this game blowing up your living room yet.
Pokemon operates forever. Now, when I say that it'll change Pokemon forever, you're probably thinking that I'm only talking about competitive Pokemon. But actually, I think that this game is going to forever change not only competitive Pokemon, but the single player experience as well.
Yeah, I think basically what could happen here is they could make Pokemon Champions. By the way, if you don't know what Pokemon Champions is, it is a game that allows you to essentially have Pokemon battles wherever you want. You can play it on the Switch, you can play it on your mobile devices, your phones as well. And it's been kind of advertised as, at least what we saw in the trailer, is like the definitive battling experience, because they had Terrestrialization and Mega Evolution in the same battle against each other in the doubles format, which is the official format that they use for Pokemon battling. So the idea potentially could be that they will take the competitive format and just move it over to this game so it's in its own area, and then you can have the single player games essentially do whatever you want them to do. You could have like Legends Arceus, like, oh, Legends Arceus and Legends ZA. That's a Gen 10 game now, or, well, obviously it's not gonna be a Gen 10 game, but you could have the next full generation of games not really rely so much on the repetitive format that the generations have had all the way up until now, and you can let them get a little spicy with it, a little crazy with it. Who knows?
Every year on Pokemon Day, there is some kind of broadcast normally announcing upcoming titles and things that the Pokemon Company is working on. This year is the 29th anniversary, and many people were really eager and excited for Pokemon Day because there's basically been almost no news, not only about Generation 10, but also about the upcoming game Pokemon Legends ZA.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Generation 10 will be next year because it's the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. That just lines up. So Pokemon Presents next year is going to be crazy. I saw a lot of people were quite upset. Like, this Presents showed nothing. It was kind of lame. And I'm like, yeah, you might think that if you don't really care about competitive much. They didn't really show a huge amount about Legends ZA in terms of new stuff. They did show like a new battle format, which is kind of cool. I'm interested in that. And they showed how you can explore the city. But a lot of people left it feeling a little bit underwhelmed, we'll say. But I really think they're just saving up their energy. They're charging the Spirit Bomb that will be the 30th anniversary stuff. I would imagine. I don't know, but we'll see.
Going into the broadcast, myself and I would guess most of the fandom were expecting that these two games would be the focal point. However, what we were not expecting was the release of a new title called Pokemon Champions.
As soon as this popped up, I was like, I've been asking for this for years. I've been asking for like a Pokemon Showdown-esque official format that you can use and you can play and you can make your Pokemon in for years. Yeah, I would get so many more people into the franchise. Now, I don't know what kind of monetization they're going to do in this. It could be like a monthly subscription. It could be you just buy the game outright. It could be free to play potentially with the ability to like get skins for Pokemon. I mean, that would be kind of interesting. Like in Pokemon Unite, you can get skins to your Pokemon. What if in Champions, like in Marvel Rivals, the only thing they charge for is like skins, profile pictures, just cosmetic stuff like that? Could you imagine putting like a suit and a bow tie on your Charizard as you go to Worlds? That would be crazy.
This title was frankly completely unexpected, which is funny, especially because it could end up being one of the most impactful Pokemon titles of all time. So what is Pokemon Champions? Well, we don't know that much about it, but we have a good general idea. Effectively, as best that I can tell, this is a modern Pokemon battle simulator. One of the first questions that you might have is like, why?
not actual gameplay footage. Okay, I'm pretty sure this, if we go back to, I'm pretty sure this is actual gameplay footage. The not actual gameplay footage is maybe like the person sitting down or something like that. As you can see in this area, like we have a lot of space here. Now, they're not going to have all the Pokemon in Pokemon Champions as they first release it, which kind of makes sense because not all the Pokemon are usually available in the actual official competitive regulations, which there's like seasons, they go through regulations, and they're kind of like seasons where in a certain period of time, you'll only be able to use certain Pokemon, which makes sense. I assume eventually they will implement them all and add like more battle features and things like that. This feels like the kind of game that they want to continually update over many, many years rather than just have it be a one and done kind of, oh, you can battle. All right, switch 2 time. Let's go, baby. We're going to leave this one behind.
Why does a battle simulator matter? Like maybe you're somebody who just plays the single player campaign and you're like, yeah, I mean, I don't really care about battling. So like, it doesn't matter to me. And you're about to click off this video. But you shouldn't, because it actually does matter to you. Pokemon Champions appears to be a game entirely focused around battling. This isn't technically like a brand new idea from Pokemon, given that we did have like Battle Revolution and Pokemon Stadium many years ago, but it is certainly a new idea.
Many years ago. Those games are old.
Yeah, at least in modern times. That being said, I think that Pokemon Champions is going to be very, very different. It's also new and exciting because it's doing something that has never been possible before, which is allowing players to battle on their phones as well as on their Switches.
This is why I think this is something they're going to continually update over a very, very long period of time. I think Pokemon really wants a lot of mobile games that just persist forever. Like they have Go for side stuff, I suppose. I don't know. Go also has like a competitive format, so that's impressive too. They have Pocket TCG for the TCG, and now they need something that can be on the phones for the regular players of the normal games for them to enjoy wherever they are as well. And I think they've been trying to find mobile games that are persistent and popular over many years. Like they have Sleep, they have Cafe Remix. They're trying to hit everything they possibly can. Every format and every genre of this franchise that has ever existed, they're trying to hit in mobile games so they can have, I would guess, like persistent revenue. And because mobile games are generally free to play, but also played by many, potentially more people worldwide than purchase games on the Switch and stuff like that.
As far as I can tell, there seems to be cross-compatibility, but again, it's still pretty early. I would bet that there's cross-compatibility though. Okay, but if you don't care about Pokemon battles, then again, why does this matter? I think in order to answer this, we should think about why would Game Freak want to do this in the first place? Obviously, I don't work at Game Freak, and so I don't have like access to their, official reasoning or whatever, but I have given this a fair bit of thought, and there's some things that I realized after thinking about it more that didn't stand out to me as obvious at first.
Okay, before he goes into his reason, I'm gonna predict. I'm just gonna go through my reasoning. I think that they would want to make this because having a centralized battling experience makes more sense in terms of every time a new game comes out, you have to buy the new game, so it's kind of like a paywall in a way, and you have to adjust to the new game. The new game has new features and all that. If you have one centralized experience, you have that area that you focus on, and you never have to change from that or divert from that. Additionally, if they have one centralized area for all the competitive stuff and all that, then they can make the games not rely on that, and they can take away potentially development time from the main series games that they would put into making sure that the competitive system works correctly and balancing and all of that. They can just have the main series games be completely separate from that and not have to worry about the additional development time that goes into the competitive side as well. So they can save time on that, potentially save money by putting the competitive side potentially in a different development team. I think they said it was a different development team. I think they said it was like oversaw by Game Freak, but like the development's done by a different company. I'm not really sure exactly if that's the case, but I think I saw that.
Right now, the way that Pokemon games are set up, the single player experience and the competitive player experience are closely tied together. Whenever they introduce a new mechanics such as Terrestrialization, Dynamax, Z-moves, Mega Evolution. These mechanics need to be fun for the single player, but they also have to be balanced around the competitive players. This balance is especially important because after a game's initial release window, after the initial hype has kind of died down, most of the marketing the game gets will be from some sort of competitive battles, often through Pokemon's own World Championships and the other events in the circuit.
Or silly YouTubers making silly YouTube videos. Hey!
So, if a game is balanced really badly, that ends up actually making the Pokemon company look bad and lazy, and they don't want that. But, as I'm sure many of you know, most people who play through the game don't care at all about the competitive experience.
That is true. I've also said this for a long time too. Most people playing through like the regular games, I'd say like 95% of the players, honestly, probably 99% of the players have never like even watched a VGC game in their life. Now that's probably changing with the rise and popularity of VGC YouTubers like Wolfie, like Moxie, and different people that have been coming up recently and bring more attention to it, because EYC, I just went to EYC, that's the European Internationals. It was one of the biggest tournaments ever. I think the popularity of the competitive format is just kind of like increasing. I mean, I've been watching more VGC recently. I don't know about you guys. But to me, competitive always felt like this far off thing that I can't really participate in because of one main thing, at least in my life, which is I'm too lazy to breed. I don't want to reset for the good IVs. So it just felt like, okay, the barrier to entry is you have to make the team. And I don't want to grind to make the team. Therefore, I shall never participate in competitive.
So the game is basically forced to be optimized around something that only a very, very small percentage of players who actually play it will, experience. Beyond just balancing issues, though, the competitive battles and the single player experience being, tied together in the same game actually really limits what you can do with the single player experience. For example, I played through Legends Arceus when it first released, and I had a great time with that game. I really enjoyed that you could catch Pokemon like outside of battle. I thought that was really neat. And a bunch of the other mechanical changes they liked as well. Didn't love strong and agile style. I didn't love everything, but in many ways, it felt much more like a modern video game than kind of an updated Pokemon game.
I kind of dig the agile style and the strong style. I think it was cool for one game. I don't think they should keep this around for the future, but I think it was cool for one game. Legends ZA, they revealed that there's a new style of battling where you can interact in real time. You have like a dodge roll system. So they're turning it into Dark Souls, that's cool, right?
However, as you may recall, that game doesn't have player versus player battles because the battle system was optimized around making the single player gameplay fun to experience rather than being something that would actually work if you were to play against your friends. So imagine Game Freak had found a new style of allowing players to experience the single player gameplay, and everybody loved it, and it was pretty much just a strict upgrade, but it didn't work with the official competitive format. What would you do then? Well, if your new system didn't work with competitive battles, that would kind of put you in a tough situation, right? Like, of course, you could just cut.
I think this new battle system is really interesting, by the way. The positioning in battles actually having an effect on whether or not you get hit by a move is really interesting. As you can see, like, the Stealth Rocks was set up in front of the Hippowdon, and the Talonflame charged into the Stealth Rocks, which means there was a kind of like a barrier, like a protection for the Hippowdon there. If the Talonflame instead had maybe like diverted, gone around the Hippowdon, gone around the Stealth Rocks and attacked from an angle, then they wouldn't have gotten hit by the Stealth Rocks, which I don't know, I think it's really cool.
Competitive battles from the game, but that would be really bad for a number of reasons. I think people would not be happy with that. I'm biased, of course, but I think even other players, enjoy battling their friends. It would also be bad from a marketing angle.
Yeah, I mean, if there was no like PvP battles, I would be cooked. How am I gonna do it? Then we fight on Scarlet and Violet for 16 years. Oh no, I'd have to adapt. Oh no.
So you would reach the conclusion that you want to include player versus player battles in your game, but you wouldn't use a different system for the player versus player battles than you would for like the player versus, the environment battles, right? And so you wouldn't actually be able to update your system, even if you found something better. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the single player experience and the competitive player experience are actually pretty different, and they kind of require different things to be optimized and to feel good. And by separating these out into different games, the Pokemon Company is then able to have two different systems that they can work around to make the best that they can be, and they're able to make changes independently without them being directly tied to each other, while still having them be connected enough because you can send Pokemon between the games. Again, feel free to take this all with a grain of salt. This is just why I think they might have done this and why I think it actually might make sense and why I think it might actually be a good thing. If I can be honest, when I saw the trailer, initially I was actually pretty nervous because I was like, oh, this is a big change. Like, this is going to change things in a big way. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this actually could give Game Freak more control to make the game better. And of course, there's no guarantee that it will be better, but I do see the reasoning behind why they would give this a shot. So
I think it makes more sense in terms of like, I feel like it becomes easier to understand if all competitive Pokemon, or at least like the official battling of competitive Pokemon, I guess there is Unite, and there is obviously the trading card game, and there's obviously Go as well. If it's all done under one roof, it becomes somewhat easier to understand because there's so many formats and there's so much change that's happened over the years in terms of the features and the mechanics and stuff like that. If you just battle in this one game and never change from that one game, then it becomes, I suppose it's like easier to advertise in a way as well.
Let's talk
right?
about impact. And again, just a reminder, there isn't that much actual information out, so this is my best guess based on what I think is likely to happen and what is likely to come from these games, but it could be totally off base, so don't take it as fact. This is just what I think.
So I really want this to be like a Showdown-esque thing that you can play with the really nice, or I said really nice, the acceptable graphics and the ability to create your own team basically from nothing, to be able to adjust your stats, your EVs, your IVs and all that. I don't think it'll be like that, That ideally, that's what I would want it to be, so that anyone can immediately jump in and be like, I know exactly what I want to make. Here it is. It's done in a few minutes, and now I can get to the most important part, which is the actual playing the game. I want to actually play the game. I'm sure there'll be rentals and things like that, and obviously you can import your Pokemon from home as well. Like, if it would be cool to import your Pokemon from home and be able to play that way. I also think it'd be really, really nice to just be able to create whatever Pokemon you want. Like, as long as it follows the legality and it is achievable within the game, so that you could technically bring any Pokemon into Pokemon Home, and any Pokemon that you can bring into Pokemon Home, you can then create in Champions, so that it isn't illegal. You're not using illegal ability, you're not using illegal moves, you're not using like illegal stats or anything like that. As long as it's achievable, then you should be able to create it.
I think that it is almost certain that official competitive Pokemon tournaments will take place in Pokemon Champions, perhaps indefinitely, depending on how they go. The reason I think this is because, I mean, this is a game totally built around battling, and so to not have your official tournaments use the battling simulator, to me, seems like a missed opportunity. And also, why are you doing it?
Yeah, that would be really weird.
And I think this could be a really good thing. Just speaking personally for a second, on the one hand, this is kind of scary because this would be like a big change for competitive players. Like, we always have played in the newest mainline game, and so moving to a game that could exist in parallel to the mainline games, there's room for that to not go great for us, right? But at the same time, I think that having a dedicated environment just for battling could also lead to better rule sets, maybe actual balance patches, because right now, like, we don't get balance patches ever. Like,
oh wait, that's true. I forgot they dude, they barely update like the competitive side of the games. Well, I mean, to be fair, they barely update the games. They don't really do many fixes that way. But I guess if it's a different team that's just exclusively running Champions and they're not doing anything else, they're not, you know, being moved on to make it the next game or anything like that, then you could have a dedicated group of people that is constantly updating the game. Like, for example, like any online multiplayer game in the world. Like, you get Marvel Rivals, you get your Overwatch, you constantly get update patches, balancing things if something's too overtuned, and you can change it slightly. And of course, the stats and the balance would exist solely within that game, so that you don't have to worry about messing things up for like the single player experience outside of that.
Pokemon is broken at the moment. It's just like, deal with it and find other Pokemon that can beat it. And so perhaps it would be easier to fine tune Pokemon that are overperforming, like a certain, you know, fire type starter Pokemon, in an environment where it doesn't affect every single player who's just, you know, playing through the game with their beloved kitten or whatever. Another upside of moving to a simulator is that, I mean, we don't know exactly how it's going to work, but it is very likely that the way in which you get Pokemon in game is going to be different. If the entire focus of the simulator is just to, you know, battle with your Pokemon, then it is likely that getting good Pokemon to battle with will be easier than it is in the mainline games.
I would imagine so. I mean, like, obviously in Showdown, you can just like click and make a team of whatever you want, right? I mean, assuming that this is a game and they want to gamify it in a way, maybe you do so many battles and you unlock Pokemon as you go. Maybe if you beat a certain trainer, you get their best Pokemon that you can then use, and you can then create different movesets and abilities and sets out of. Like, that'd be kind of interesting potentially, so that there's incentive to play maybe like against the AI, or if you get a certain amount of wins, you unlock some. I don't know. I mean, there's so many ways that you could gamify this, so it's not just straight up you can use whatever you want from the day dot, like you can in Showdown. But it opens the door for a lot of people,
and
right?
Maybe this is far-fetched, but I think that it is not crazy to think that if the Pokemon Company is making their own battle simulator, that they are looking at the success of the existing Pokemon battle simulator that is unofficial, that being Pokemon Showdown. I'm sure the Pokemon Company isn't thrilled about Pokemon Showdown, but at the same time, it can't be denied just the impact that it's had. And frankly, it is the easiest way to battle against your friends or other strangers online, because it's so...
I'm going to say, if Pokemon Showdown did not exist, Pokemon's competitive would be even less popular than it is now, because there would be no super easy way to jump on and test things. You'd have to spend so much time grinding. And I'm not going to say like it's an incredible amount of time just for a single Pokemon, but when you consider that in order to test a team, you need to have the team and then use it in a certain amount of battles. If you're spending 30 minutes, an hour creating each Pokemon, that's like that's a full-time day at work to test a team that you're like, this doesn't really work. I need to test another one now, which would just destroy people's motivation to ever create any more competitive
easy
teams
to just
try
boot it
new.
up, you know, put in the Pokemon you want to use or play random battles and start battling.
As Showdown has saved competitive Pokemon.
So it's possible that, of course, it's still a grind to get your Pokemon in Pokemon Champions, but personally, I doubt it. And if this is the case where you can kind of, you know, just pick the Pokemon you want to use and not have to go through the trouble of breeding for the right IVs, giving them the right
Shady? Oh my god, it is Shady. It's Shady's video. Why is Drew dressed up like that?
knocking out wild Pokemon to get the TRs that you want. I don't like that mechanic. Then I think it could really lower the barrier to entry to a lot of players who would be interested in playing competitively, but are daunted by the idea of, going through all the trouble to get their team in game when they don't even know if it'll be good. In theory, a battle simulator could also add features that don't currently exist in any mainline game, such as the ability to intentionally lower one of your IVs, which can be a real cause for headaches at the moment, especially when you're dealing with legendary Pokemon. This is not an exaggeration. When I was preparing for Worlds, I needed to get a Calyrex Shadow, and it took me over 9 hours to get the Calyrex, and I got lucky. That's just to get one Pokemon, and I'm lucky that I had the time to do that, but not everybody does.
Yeah, not even just the time, but the motivation. When you think about the fact that, I'd really like to compete in Pokemon. I love battling. Except it's not just battling, is it? It's you have to grind. You have to really grind. So if you want to just get a team to go to a local event or a regionals where you're like, oh man, that sounds like fun. Maybe I'd like to participate in that. Maybe I'll make a team. I have to spend how long? I have to reset how many times? Nah, I no longer want to do that now. My motivation is shot. You could have people that really, really love the battling aspects, but really, really don't want to do the grinding aspects.
Right now, we just don't know enough to say whether or not the battle simulator will just let you pick the Pokemon you want to use and, put in all the details and just be done with it right then and there. It very well could still be some kind of, process. Maybe you need to use resources that you get. We don't know anything, right? But it is very likely, in my opinion, that it'll be much faster and therefore it'll be much easier to get new people to give competitive a shot, which as somebody who really cares about the growth of competitive Pokemon, I think is a good thing. One last thing that I want to say about accessibility is that it seems like from what they've said, you can connect Pokemon champions to Pokemon Home. So it seems all but confirmed that you'll be able to transfer in Pokemon that you've used in other Pokemon games and then be able to battle with them in Pokemon Champions.
I mean, that's cool. That's just a nice little thing. Connectivity is always good. Being able to transfer your Pokemon through different games is always a good thing. I wonder if you'd be able to change their stats in Champions. I don't know if you would be able to. Assuming that you can change their stats in Scarlet and Violet, there's no reason to believe that you wouldn't be able to change their stats in Champions as well. I mean, that just seems to make sense to me.
So if you have a Pokemon that's been your beloved partner since, Ruby and Sapphire, you'll still be able to battle with them in tournaments and against other players in Pokemon Champions. I suspect that this game has been in development for a little bit, but there is a more recent release that has had really resounding success that could, in theory, have influenced this title as well. I don't know for sure. Maybe it influenced its development, maybe it didn't, but
wait, what? I'm trying to think about what it could be. Maybe I'm too Marvel Rivals pilled, but I feel like everything is Marvel Rivals.
Regardless, I think it can tell us something about how this will perform. I am talking about Pokemon TCG Pocket.
Never mind, I was completely off base. Yeah, I mean, I was saying earlier that the Pokemon Company really wants people to be able to play Pokemon games everywhere, all the time. Even on their tiny little phones. You don't have a Switch on you? That's fine. You have your tiny little phone. You can play the Pocket game. Do you want to open some packs now? Don't you want to open some packs, huh? Oh my god, what if you have to open loot boxes to get Pokemon? Okay, no, they're not going to do that. I would imagine. That would be bloody ridiculous. That would be ridiculous.
For those of you who don't know, Pokemon TCG Pocket is a mobile app, which is effectively a simplified version of the Pokemon trading card game. Rather than having 6 prizes to choose from, you have 3 prizes. The Pokemon overall are a lot weaker, and the games are overall a lot faster. From what I can tell, Pokemon TCG Pocket appears to have been a resounding success. And I think it's working really well as a bridge between general Pokemon fans and people who are actually competing in trading card game tournaments. The trading card game is also at an all-time high right now in terms of popularity, and I don't think that's necessarily because it's seeing the benefits of TCG Pocket just yet, but I also don't imagine that it's hurting.
Oh yeah, it's for sure helping. I mean, obviously, like the prices of all the TCG stuff right now is skyrocketed. There was like this big explosion because of like prismatic evolutions and a ton of alternating factors. But it does make it hard, I would assume, for the players to get the cards. But it all combines into one thing, which is like Pokemon TCG is really, really big right now.
If Pokemon Champions is good and it's easy to play and it's easy to kind of pick up and get into, even if you don't have a background already in competitive battling, I think that it could spike competitive Pokemon's popularity in ways that, like, I mean, I can't even really articulate because I can't even really fathom them.
That's true, because I will say, in terms of TCG Pocket, that was the first time I ever played a game of the TCG. I had never played the TCG before that, and I started playing on TCG Pocket. And it's interesting, I understand how the game works now at the very least. At least it gets you in the door, which means you have infinitely more information than you did previously for when you started with 0, and now you're like, oh, I understand the basics of this now. This was fun. And just having that moment of this was fun just tick in your brain, that's what they need to grab you. As soon as you have the, oh, this is fun, and then you go back again, you're like, oh, well, maybe it's fun, so maybe I'll do it again. Maybe I'll come back. Maybe I'll keep playing. maybe I'll like try and get really good at this. I don't know.
Part of the reason why I am so excited for this game is because I think it's filling a need that we've had for a really long time. Back not that long ago, during like Sun and Moon, I'm talking like 2017 to 2019, competitive Pokemon, especially official competitive Pokemon, VGC, was not popular. Basically, most videos would cap out around like 10,000 views on YouTube. And if you got 10,000 views, you're like, I did it. Like, that's everybody who cares about competitive Pokemon. Good job, me.
That was every single person. But now, EUIC, huge. Those videos, let's have a look and see what the EUIC finals Wolfie got in terms of viewership. So the EUIC streams, the watch party stream had 100,000 views. The actual stream in which it happened had 417,000 views. And then the separate uploaded VOD on YouTube has 437 views. No, it's not true. 437,000 views, which means altogether, cumulatively, that is 1 million people just on the official Pokemon YouTube channel that has seen this. That doesn't count the Twitch version of the stream, everyone who watched it on like different formats. There could have been like reaction streams. I know Cybertron, Iron Cybertron Zhang, he did a reaction stream at the very least. I know Wolfie also reacted to his own win and posted it on his channel, so you have those views as well. It's exploded. Wow, that's actually a massive difference when you think about it. That's like a 1,000% increase.
And part of the reason why competitive Pokemon was struggling so much during Sun and Moon is because there was no bridge. Pokemon as a franchise is extremely popular. I mean, it's the highest earning media franchise in the world. But all these people playing Pokemon had no idea that competitive Pokemon was even a thing. And in many ways, it was actually kind of hard to find information. Like, there was nothing mentioned in the original games about it. And the official competitive format uses all double battles, whereas the single player experience is almost entirely single battles.
Yeah,
so even
really
though you had
different.
this huge existing player base and you had this, established competitive scene with tournaments, with prize money, with all these wonderful things about it, with broadcasts, there wasn't really a clear way to get people who cared about Pokemon to care about the competitive scene. With Pokemon Champions, that could totally change, especially if traditional player versus player Pokemon battles are taken out of the mainline Pokemon games and instead put directly into Pokemon Champions.
I don't think that they would take them out of the mainline games. I feel like that wouldn't make the most sense. I feel like they'll still have it. They just won't be as focused on it.
In the battle
right?
footage that they showed of the game, it was a double battle, which again is the...
I mean, I guess they did take out Legends Arceus, but that felt like more of a spin-off. But that might be a start of a trend, potentially. You never know.
Same format that we use in the official competitive format. Now, while we're on the topic of popularity, there is actually something that I'm pretty worried about and pretty concerned about when I think about this game and the impact that it could have. Pokemon tournaments at the moment have exploded in popularity.
Yeah, EUIC was big, baby.
For context, tournaments used to struggle to get 100 entrants, and the tournament that I just went to last weekend had over 1,000.
1,400.
And that's a good thing, right? The game is growing, people are interested, but there are some logistical problems. The structure that tournaments use has had to change twice in the last 2 years already because the amount of players interested in playing has grown so much that like the old tournament structures, which were built for fewer players, couldn't handle them. And tournaments at the moment are selling out in seconds, meaning that lots of people who would love to play just can't play.
That's true. I know at least one person that really wanted to like compete in the tournament, and tickets were just gone. Tickets were just gone like that. It was crazy. Even the spectator passes, which it wasn't even that long ago that they opened up spectator passes for the events. The spectator passes, they were gone quickly too. And once they're gone, they're just gone. You can't get any more.
And of course you might think, well, just, open more slots. Come on, like it's not that hard. But the problem is that the Pokemon Company is running these huge tournaments and they've booked venues sometimes years in advance. And if the game suddenly spikes in popularity, which currently it is already doing without this game, they aren't able to just, quickly change venue sizes or change venues. My suspicion is that the Pokemon Company is several years ahead of where they would have liked to be in a best case scenario, and that's actually causing some problems. That being said, I mean, there's nothing really that we can do about this. Like, I mean, none of the fans can do anything. None of us creators can do anything about it. We kind of just have to hope that, the Pokemon Company finds solutions. But yeah, like for the tournament that I was at this past weekend, one of my best friends tried to sign up, was there the minute that registration opened and didn't get a slot. And there were over 1,000 slots and he didn't get in the first minute. So it's not necessarily something that is, cause for panic, but if the game really does explode, if we see even something similar to TCG Pocket and the impact that that's had, I think that it could become very difficult for people who want to play to actually play. Now, the trailer for Pokemon Champions didn't really show off that much specific information. It gave us a really good general feel for what the game would be, but it didn't have many specifics in it, which is why I've, really tried to preface a lot of this by saying this is my speculation.
They did show, at the very least, they did show that Megas and Terrestrialization are in the same game, right?
That being said, there was something extremely interesting that they did make sure to show off.
And they also showed that Hisuian forms, I guess alternate forms are in the game as well, which, I mean, that's not like necessarily a very important thing. Also, Aegislash is not in Scarlet and Violet, and they showed him. I mean, that's something too, so that, you know, Scarlet and Violet Pokemon alongside Pokemon that is not in Scarlet and Violet, that's something as well. Like, I feel like they were very intentional with the way that they chose the Pokemon for this. They're like, okay, we have to have Charizard, we have to have a Mega Evolve, we have to have like a regional variant that's also a starter, so you have to show those. We have to have a Scarlet and Violet Pokemon with Terastallization next to a Pokemon that's not in Scarlet and Violet, so you can have them fighting side by side for the first time. Like, there's a lot going on there.
And that was that there were 2 different generational mechanics present in the same battle. In the trailer, we see Charizard Mega Evolve to Charizard-X, and we see Dondozo on the opposite side Terastallize. This is very, very interesting. And frankly, I'm going to say that this isn't really speculation, because if you couldn't have battles with both Terastallization and Mega Evolution, I don't think that they would show it in the trailer. So we can assume that there will be multiple generational mechanics present in these battles, or at least that they have the option sometimes to use these generational mechanics in the same battles together. This is another advantage of having a game solely dedicated to just battling, where they're able to bring in older mechanics without it affecting the single player experience.
And also, they could have the regulations. I mentioned the regulations before that kind of like seasons. They can have a regulation that's like just Mega Evolutions, no other mechanics allowed. And you can have like a just Terastallization one. You can have one with no mechanics. And then you can have one with 2. You can say, oh, we're going to have Terastallization and Mega Evolution. And then we're not going to put Z-moves. We're not going to put Z-moves in that one. We're going to ignore Z-moves. That's not real.
I think it is somewhat likely that the other central mechanics of Z-moves and Dynamax also make a return as well, though again, it's just speculation. I think that this is a really, really cool concept. This is a huge advantage of having a game just dedicated to battling, where, you know, there could be some rule sets where it's just Mega Evolution, or some rule sets where it's, you know, just Terastallization, or some where it's Megas and Terastallization. But the other advantage in theory is that they're actually able to mess with the numbers a little bit and fine-tune all of these mechanics to be somewhat comparable in power. In a vacuum, Dynamax was the strongest mechanic because it doubled your HP and gave you a huge boost to your power, but maybe in the simulator they could change it to be, I don't know, a 30% increase to your HP and a 20% increase to your power, just throwing out random numbers,
that's true,
right?
yeah.
Something that gets...
And then you could have it be balanced with like Terastallization, and you can have it be balanced with the Mega Evolution, and then we can ignore Z-moves.
More in line with the Mega Evolution. It's possible that, you know, multiple Pokemon on your team can be affected by, you know, multiple of these mechanics, but it's also possible that you would have to choose each battle, whether you're going to Mega Evolve, whether you're going to Terastallize, Dynamax, or use a Z-move, or that you can mix and match. I think that this really opens up some interesting gameplay, and with...
Yeah, we don't necessarily know that we can mix and match just yet, because they just had one Mega on one side of the field and one Terastallization on the other side of the field, so we don't know if we can.
All these different mechanics and all the different combinations, I think it could keep the game really fresh, having access to all these different tools that you would never have all of them in one mainline game, when they are balanced correctly. And when you think about rotating in Pokemon and rotating in mechanics and out Pokemon, maybe you ban legendaries for one season, maybe you only have, you know, Z-moves for one season, whatever, I think the game could stay really fresh for a really long time, even if there aren't new Pokemon being added. Of course, there was one line in the trailer that is kind of related to this, which is that they said that not all Pokemon would be available in this game, at least at first.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense in a way. Like, they've been doing that with all the games, right? Am I right, boys? They got no freaking national decks in this. I would assume that this is going to be fixed with updates. Only select Pokemon will be available for use in Pokemon Champions. Not all Pokemon available in Pokemon Home will appear in Pokemon Champions. I don't know if that's necessarily like a permanent thing, or more of a, yeah, when we release the game, sure, there's going to be like 600 of them, but over time we'll update and add patches that will release more Pokemon. I guess that kind of works as like a hype building thing as well. Like, in this November, 100 new Pokemon will be revealed in Champions. And everyone's like, oh my god, I gotta jump back on. There's a new freaking season, new update, new Pokemon. That's sick.
There might be some people who are concerned about this. Like, yeah, not all Pokemon are going to be in the game, at release at least. But I don't think this is inherently a problem. Counterintuitively, having more Pokemon present in a competitive format actually decreases diversity, because when you get certain Pokemon that are just so strong, they end up crowding out a lot of the weaker Pokemon. For example, Pokemon like Scrafty and Hitmontop, who used to be really effective Pokemon, have basically seen zero usage once Incineroar was released. And there's actually a lot of Pokemon that having Incineroar in a game just kind of crowds out. I'm sure that eventually most Pokemon will be added to...
Yeah, they're going to run a format that just bans Incineroar. It doesn't do anything else, it just bans Incineroar.
Pokemon Champions. I mean, I'm not sure, but I would suspect. But I think it's actually a good thing if Game Freak considers curating the rule sets to make them more interesting for competitive players, rather than just being like, here's every Pokemon, like enjoy Landorus, enjoy Incineroar, you know, enjoy Calyrex. If you're upset about not every Pokemon being in the game, I totally get it. I understand people want to use their favorites. But for me personally, I think that the idea that they are willing to not just put every Pokemon in is actually a good thing, at least.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be in ever. It just means that they're not in at that time. There will probably be an update at some point that will add Pokemon, potentially even like take Pokemon away so they can increase the diversity. You can kind of do a little bit of a rotation. In the TCG, I'm pretty sure they rotate cards out. So you can't use certain cards and then you rotate new cards in, and then you take some cards out. Like, sure, everyone wants to use their favorite card all the time, but for the meta, it's nice to have a more diverse gameplay experience, which ironically, like Wolfie said, happens when you have less Pokemon in the game.
Or enjoying competitive play. I'm sure also just like the mainline games that they will always be adding more Pokemon in so that by the time, it's been out for a little bit, I'm sure a vast majority of the Pokemon will be present. But again, that is speculation. Perhaps the only Pokemon legal will be, electric types, and we'll have to play a really weird format. One big elephant in the room is monetization. And this is one that I think is interesting, but
skins, baby. Let me put a suit on my Zod. Let me give him a funny hat that's not a Terra hat. That's what we should do. That's how you make the money.
Fortunately, I don't really have anything to say, I think. It is likely that the game will try and make money, whether that's through a one-time purchase, whether it's through, Nintendo's online features, which I'm pretty sure you'll have to pay for that. I can't imagine otherwise. Whether it's through, maybe you have to like, I don't know, buy the ability to make your Pokemon stronger. I don't know.
That would be insane.
I think it is likely that the game will be monetized in some.
There's no way they're going to do pay to win, right? I can't ever see that happening.
And I have no idea whether or not that will feel predatory, whether or not that will feel, exploitative. I don't imagine that it will be pay to win personally. It might be pay to save time in a worst case scenario. But I do think that generally it seems like people have felt that the monetization policies in Pokemon's mobile games are not the worst out there. Like, I know TCG Pocket, there's a lot of ways that you can effectively play for free. And with Pokemon Unite, which is the other big example that I'm familiar with, I think a lot of the game you can accomplish via grinding. Like, of course, it will take a little bit more time, but I don't think it's like a crazy example.
I forget, in Pokemon Unite, do you have to buy I think you have to buy Pokemon, don't you? I think, yes, you do. You have to buy Pokemon, but you can buy it with like the in-game currency. Because there's also there's some hero shooters like Marvel Rivals that just releases with all the characters out at once, and you can just play all the characters at the same time.
And a lot of the purchases that you can make are for cosmetics. It would be really funny if we had cosmetics for Pokemon in official battles. I'm not sure if that will happen. I really have no idea. What I will say is that I am tentatively optimistic about this. I'm sure that you will have to pay some for it, but I also don't really mind. Like, I would pay for a Pokemon game anyway. That's my opinion. I have some faith that they won't have super predatory monetization practices, but we have no information about this. So like with the other ones, I felt like I had educated guesses. With this, I've got nothing. So, we'll have to see. The last thing that I want to talk about before we wrap up here is the impact that this could have. Obviously, a lot of this video has been speculative, right? And I don't normally like speculative content, but because this is such a monument.
I mean, this does look really sick. You can see she has like 3 Pokeballs on each side. There's a lot of battling going on. We've only seen 2v2 stuff, but I would imagine they would have singles battles as well.
Monumental announcement. I felt like I should talk a little bit and try to give what I hope has been, level-headed, realistic expectations based on what we know right now. Very well could be off the mark, but this is just my best guess at being reasonable.
This says bringing Pokemon battles to everyone, so I would imagine this is a free-to-play game. If they're releasing it on mobile and Switch at the same time, I would imagine that this is going to be a free-to-play game that has some kind of monetization built into it, which most likely I would assume is some kind of cosmetics. I don't know, like maybe. Well, in terms of Pokemon monetization, it usually is cosmetics if you just look at Unites. But there's also the ability to buy the Pokemon that you want. I don't know. You can grind it out. So there's going to be some ability for you to just play the game and be able to grind the currency and be able to unlock whatever you want that way, I'd imagine. But if they don't have all the Pokemon available to you immediately and you have to unlock them first, then I would imagine there would be some way to buy it as well.
But I want to take a second and kind of talk about what this could mean. Of course, it's possible the game flops and nobody plays it and it's just kind of a flash in the pan, but I think that this could be a real turning point for Pokemon going forward. In a perfect scenario, I think it is totally possible that the existence of this game not only makes...
Yeah, said they've seen... Oh, that's right. The Pokemon Works. They said development is overseen by Game Freak and handled by Pokemon Works, right?
In a perfect...
No, Game Freak carried out the
scenario,
planning.
I think it is totally...
And the development is being handled by the Pokemon Works, which apparently was set up about a year ago in the same building as Ilka, who made BDSP. And they were made to assist with the production of... Oh, it was made as a joint venture by the Pokemon Company and Ilka. The company was founded to assist with the production of games and game-related services. There's Pokemon Champions, which I guess they also handle... Sleep and Home as well. I guess the fact that they handle both of them is good. Like they handle home and champions, so they have this kind of in-house knowledge of how everything is supposed to work, right?
Really possible that the existence of this game not only makes competitive play drastically better, but also makes the single player experience better as well. More than that, I think that this game could be a really, really good and needed gateway to introduce people to how wonderful it is to battle with competitive Pokemon. Speaking personally, Pokemon tournaments have just straight up changed my life. Even before I was doing YouTube, getting to meet so many incredible people traveling around the world, it's not an exaggeration to say that it really did change my life. And I don't think that I'm the only one. I think many of us who play competitively feel similarly about the impact that this game has had. Part of the reason why I feel so motivated to make YouTube videos in the first place is because I feel like I was so lucky to have this chance to have these incredible experiences, and I want other people to at least know that they're out there if they're interested. So for me, I think that this game is a really, really great thing, and I think that it could really help to introduce more people to this world, which I love so dearly. Also, it's just really crazy to see how far this scene has grown. When I first started playing, there were like 350 people who played competitive Pokemon global. Like that was it.
That's actually insane. 350 people? That is genuinely crazy. I mean, the thing is, it still has so much more like room to grow, right? If you have like a competitive rank system in Pokemon Champions, which I know there's already a competitive rank system in Scarlet and Violet, but if you have one in Pokemon Champions and allow people to get Pokemon easily so that they don't have to like, they don't have to spend so much time grinding for their team, then it immediately becomes like something that you can genuinely try hard in.
The entire global player base. And now, I mean, it could be in the hundreds of thousands who are playing in some way, shape, or form. A game like this existing back when I first started would have been unthinkable. Like if you came in and you were like, hey guys, Pokemon's gonna make a battle simulator, you would have been laughed out the door. So it's really cool to be living in a time where, yeah, I mean, it's not a joke anymore. Like it's coming, it's happening. I'm trying to have level expectations. We don't know very much about this beyond the fact that it's coming. There's lots of things that could change. It could be bad. And yet, despite that, this feels like one of those moments where, at least for me, this is a game that could actually legitimately change my life. Like this could be a before Pokemon Champions and after Pokemon Champions kind of thing.
Or, it could be big or it could be small.
So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. And I guess I can just say that I'm really, really eager to see what they come out with and to learn more information. That's most of what I wanted to say. The last thing that I will say is this is my Wolfie prediction. Okay. This is now,
okay.
I saved this till the end because
Huge.
It's purely speculative. Okay. This is not.
Is he green screened into his own room?
My tinfoil hat.
I think he
is.
On,
and this feels a little less grounded than everything else that I've said. But here's my thought. Okay. Here's my prediction. Normally there's a new Pokemon game every 3 years. However, during the direct today, they didn't say anything about Generation 10, which means effectively we can expect Scarlet and Violet to last for at least 1 year longer than it would normally, running for 4 years rather than 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the 30th anniversary being the release of Generation 10, I mean, it just fits together so well, doesn't it? It slides in all neatly like a glove.
The problem is they are quickly running out of formats to do with Scarlet and Violet. So my tinfoil hat theory is that we're going to play one more World Championships in Scarlet and Violet, and then in the 4th year, before Generation 10 comes out, Pokemon Champions will come out, and then we'll play one World Championship in Pokemon Champions before Generation 10, maybe 2, depending on when it comes out.
That would be crazy because the game would be really new and they'd be like, okay, the game's new. We're immediately moving over to it. That'd be insane.
Theory. Anyway, thanks for watching. I know this was a different kind of video than I normally do, but I wanted to talk about Pokemon Champions because I just think it's so monumental. Thanks for watching. See you next.
No, I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be absolutely massive and I can't wait to see how things unfold with this. I'm very excited. Anyway, you should subscribe to freaking Wolfie. And if you're not doing anything else, you can use code Patterrz at Gamersubs. I'm just throwing out there. You can use code Patterrz at Gamersubs with the link in the description. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe subscribe here too.